Recording.
Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It is my honor, privilege, and pleasure, as always, to welcome Shaykh Wahid Azal of the Fatimiyya Sufi order. He's my Shaykh, Murshid, friend, and brother. And today he returns for part 20 in the series of dialogues and conversations that we have been having. And in part 20 that we are doing for this month, for the month of May, we are focusing on how many of the, let's say, the spiritual communities, the occult communities, the love and light communities, how many of them are infiltrated and their members exploited by government informants and people who are of that background. So without further ado, Nur alaikum and Bismillah, and welcome to Sheikh Wahid Azal.
Alaykum Nur and Bismillah. Let me start here. We have talked in the past about, and I've touched on this several times, that there appears to be a connection between the Baha'is in the background and agents or elements of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I have quite an extensive array of evidence to that end. And one of the nodes of evidence here is actually on Reddit with this ex-Baha'i subreddit. I've spoken about this in the past. Now, let me reveal the following. About less than a month ago, an individual on Telegram who was associated at one time with this YouTuber by the name of Hassan Ershad, who did exposés on a weekly basis on YouTube on the Baha'is. I was briefly his friend for a couple of years, and then I had to basically cut this guy off because his approach to me and the Bayanis was becoming increasingly toxic, even though I had shared quite a lot of information with this guy, discussed a lot of textual evidence with him, and for a while there, especially in the period from about 2014 to 2016, he had a very solid discursive and narratival approach to these questions. But all of a sudden, from around, I would say, the beginning of 2017 to pretty much now, he began pushing a completely different line altogether. But let me just say what was revealed to our brother Kayvan Yahyai, an individual associated with the circle of Hassan Irshad, came to Kayvan and revealed the fact that several of the individuals that had been formerly associated with Hassan Ershad, and through the course of the latter part of last year had supported the women's life movement in Iran, were ratted out by Hassan Ershad to the Iranian security services. And he also revealed to Kayvan that during the time that we were ostensibly trying to collaborate and cooperate with Hassan Ershad, to his tight circle of followers, he had revealed that the real agenda here was not to go after the Baha'is, that the Baha'is are actually harmless, and that there is a under-the-table cooperation between elements of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Baha'is, and that the real targets was us, the Bayanis, that they were going at, that the Hosa, that these supporters of the Iranian seminary and the regime in Iran, their real target was the Bayanis, the Azali community, and not the Baha'is. And he had actually told this individual this information, and Kayvan came to me and immediately told me that the conversation that had ensued. And this, again, was another layer of evidence, because Hassan Ershad, as many of us have known for a long time, is obviously part of a lower level security, part of the Islamic Republic. He's a Basij, no question about it. The fact that he was ratting out his own former supporters to the security establishment for arrest and incarceration during the Women's Life Freedom movement, basically solidifies this issue in rock, that he is working for the government and he's not just some sole operator with a theological axe to grind with the Baha'is or others. So this was more of the evidence that there is in fact a agenda, and that the Baha'is are actually cooperating with the agenda. And you see this especially more than any other place online, on Reddit, and particularly in the ex-Baha'i subreddit. Back in 2018, when I first subscribed to this place, immediately I started to to witness that there was some very fishy things going on. For example, an individual who lives in Texas by the name of Scott Akala, who is basically a Baha'i Basij enforcer on Reddit itself and elsewhere, when he would come on this ex-Baha'i list and started to attack myself and others, the moderator of that place, a guy by the name who was going under the alias at the time of Salman Wilson, instead of blocking the attacker, would immediately block me for 80 days from that list, for the sole reason is that I had revealed the identity of this person. So this gaslighting and reverse narrativization, modus operandi that I was quite familiar with the Baha'is previously in all assorted manner of lists, began to become apparent. Then when I followed this guy around, this Salman Wilson, all around Reddit, it quickly became apparent that he was a supporter of the Islamic Republic of Iran himself. And in various discussions where the issue of Babism and the history of the Bayan would come up, he would push the propaganda narratives that are very prevalent in the Shia seminary and also from official government propaganda outlets. When I finally had my official falling out with all of the members of that subreddit, Dale Husband, who is now also a moderator of that place, himself then began relentlessly pursuing the propaganda lines of the Islamic Republic of Iran itself against the Bayanis. And so it became increasingly obvious as time went by that there was even though there is squabbling on the surface between the Baha'is and the IRI, that the cooperation and collaboration of these two entities is beyond reproach. And the various identities that they have manufactured over time, to come and basically attack me or the Bayan subreddit, lends itself to the narrative that there is this cooperation going on. And since Hassan Ershad is on record now for admitting this to his former inner circle of people, that the real target are not the Baha'is by the Islamic Republic of Iran, that the real ultimate target are us, the Bayani and the Azali community, this basically then proves what I have been saying consistently since 2018, that ex-Baha'i subreddit is a gate-kept subreddit that is being simultaneously gate-kept by the Baha'is to basically gatekeep any people who get disenchanted from Baha'ism and find themselves looking for networks and communities of support online, to then immediately fall into the trap of this subreddit that is being overtly administered by individuals that I have identified as pushing the propaganda narratives of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So this is basically a joint operation by the hyphens and the IRI to keep the discourse in a sort of a status quo, to try to discredit any alternative narratives to the mainstream Baha'i narrative that is prevalent. And this is quite interesting, that even though the Baha'is at least run to human rights organizations here in the West and have this whole narrative themselves constructed against the IRI, but where it counts, that the Baha'is and the IRI are actually being underneath the table collaborating. And I've gotten corroboration of this narrative from multiple other places, from people in Iran itself. I witnessed this, Roya and I witnessed this ourselves back in 2015, that even though the Baha'is were claiming all kinds of persecution narratives, if you go to Tehran, you see a massive percentage of the local industry within Tehran itself that in some fashion or another is either participated by Baha'i investors or outright controlled by them, like cement and cement works, steel, manufacturing, the various warehousing industries that exist for that sort of thing. And anybody who knows anything about Iran knows that big industries always are usually controlled by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. So then why is it that the Baha'is in Iran itself have some kind of economic and financial collaboration going on between themselves and the IRI? When they run to the Western human rights organization and governments are claiming persecution, well, if you know anything about the manner that Cosa Nostra paradigms work, these organizations all blackmail each other. And as they blackmail each other, they collaborate with each other. They can go in other places and speak against each other and organize and act against each other. But given this very parasitic kind of modus operandi that they all run by, they're also simultaneously collaborating with each other. The Bayanis and the narrative, the true narrative of Bahabism's history and the Babi text is obviously a threat to the Baha'is, but is simultaneously a threat to the Shia seminary and the Islamic Republic of Iran, who, who think that they have not managed to control and fully discredit this narrative. So they mutually cooperate with each other, these two ostensible enemies. And we see all of this then playing out in places like Reddit. Now, my question is why is this going on in Reddit above all other of these social media platforms? It used to occur, for example, once upon a time on Yahoo groups when you had this whole platform where Yahoo was offering these groups. It used to operate in these HNet forums. It used to operate, this was when the Baha'is solely themselves were doing this. Not to the same extent it is going on Facebook. It is not going on, obviously, on Twitter. But in Reddit, this is especially the case. And Reddit was a place where back in 2012, I discovered that some individual had gone and done a complete identity theft of me, of my name. This individual was a white supremacist, and they did an identity theft posting constantly with my name, all kinds of toxic, neo-Nazi garbage. I tried to get Reddit for years to remove and delete this material, and they refused to do it. And so once I then, went on Reddit myself, you saw these patterns then repeating in a very similar fashion with almost the identical same cast of actors as I had been used to in other fora previously. I'll pass it on to you now.
Yes, Sheikh, that's absolutely right. And unfortunately, what we see in these groups, whether it's even YouTube, Reddit, so many other mediums and platforms, these kind of people who do this to smear your name and to defame you or slander you are 90% of the time government or intel informants, and they're protected.
Corporate entities. Yeah.
They're protected under national security. And I had a recent experience, as you know, with this Douglas Dietrich character from California, where he was accusing me of dangerous accusations, where I
know
believe
we dealt with that.
he himself is guilty of what he accuses others of.
Yeah.
So I had reported him to my local police. First, I contacted San Francisco police. I have the evidence, the timestamps, the links of where he slanders me and makes these accusations and tells people to make false reports against me. So I called San Francisco. I reported him to their police department, to the California State Police, which is like their highway patrol, the FBI office in San Francisco. So I reported him to all of these places. So they told me, go file a report with your local police. Okay, I did that. And I sent it over to them. Nothing was done. And this was a year ago. And this guy is still defaming and slandering and doxing people left and right. And this past summer, what had happened a year ago, now this summer is going to approach 1 year. There was an investigator that showed up at my home and saying, "Oh, you are being accused of abusing your parents." And he interviewed myself and my parents, and that was not true. And this Douglas Dietrich character admitted recently on his April 13, 2023 show, I have the timestamp and the link, where he says that I'm going to report him for elder abuse. So all of the stuff that's happening, I even told the investigator that whatever the source of this report was, make sure you hold this person liable, because lying to the authorities and agencies is a crime under local law, state law, and federal law. So I'm, as myself, my record is clean as a whistle. I never even gotten a parking ticket in my life. But see, why I'm seen as an enemy to the powers that be is because I always stood by the truth and standing with the Fatimiyya Sufi order. And this guy, Dietrich, turned on me as soon as Sheikh Wahid Azal made me his representative. And at one time, he was involved with a Baha'i woman in the past without mentioning her name. So all of these things are like interconnected here and other. And I think to myself, why is this guy defaming and doxing and slandering people and swatting people left and right? Your normal person cannot do that. So this guy and the individual that you dealt with on Reddit, they're all government informants, and they're there to just what they do is they're there to squeeze info out of people. So what this Dietrich guy does is he promotes like an anti-American slant, saying that, oh, Japan won World War II and America lost and America's bad, America's this, America's that. So he's there to identify enemies of the state for the government. It's like what we were told in the Islamic community in the post 9/11 world, that anybody comes to you and tries to start a conversation and makes you say anything about America, 90% of the time they're part of the FBI government surveillance program trying to entrap you. So this is the same thing with this Dietrich character, where he squeezes info out of people, makes you say this stuff, and then eventually tries to blackmail you and tries to dox you and slander you for like a long time. And no matter who files reports against him, who tries to do the right thing, even get lawyers after him, this guy's a protected government asset. And unfortunately, you had to deal with the same thing, and I had to deal with the same thing.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned this. Back in about a year before Roya passed away, I made the acquaintance of a gentleman on Facebook who wanted to talk to me about ongoing events at the time with these Dugan people. And this individual lived in Delaware. He swore me to secrecy. We had a conversation. I wish I had recorded him, but I didn't. He confessed to me that there is an entire corporate troll industry in the United States, or actually in North America, including Canada, where a lot of the people who were doxing, trolling, individuals, during the lead up to the Trump election and afterwards, were actually being paid by certain small corporate entities, who create these call centers or computer centers or whatnot, and these people go there. And basically their job is to troll, to follow a certain individual or group of individuals and to dox and troll and whatnot. And this is a job. This is an actual job. That there's an interest. And this was back in 2018. He revealed to me that he had been part of this, that he had been hired by a company based out of Delaware, that he was doing that. And incidentally, remember, Delaware is one of the places in the United States that is an offshore, where you cannot, you have offshore banking facilities where U.S. government regulators, whether state, federal, or otherwise, cannot probe it by law. And he admitted that he was working for a little company in Delaware, same place that Biden comes from, and that he had been tasked to basically dox, troll, surveillance certain individuals online, and that this was an industry. And as far as he was aware, that this industry had mushroomed all over the United States and Canada. And it wasn't the case that you had these people out of, St. Petersburg, Russia, or, somewhere in Moscow doing it. So this whole narrative of Russian trolls itself was basically a sleight of hand, because and I saw this myself, the vast majority of the trolls, the worst of the trolls that you were seeing during that lead up to the Trump election, and it's, aftermath, were not outside in Russia at all. They were in the United States. Yet in this investigation that Robert Mueller, did about the election of Donald Trump, none of this information even made it into a footnote of the Mueller report. I actually reached out to the office of the special prosecutor at that time, which was Robert Mueller. Given the information that I was getting about these, the nature of these so-called Russian trolls, who weren't Russian at all, but mostly North Americans, American people in various parts of the United States, they didn't take it seriously at all. I think they would probably take it seriously today, given what transpired with the January 6th, storming of the U.S. Capitol. But this tells you that even the people who are tasked with, basically understanding a given phenomena, right, from a government level, are only allowed, a extremely narrow scope of investigation when you have these elements that are part of that investigation, that are part of the larger phenomena that they're looking at. So even though, I do believe that the Russians, did whatever they did for the election of Donald Trump, but I also believe that the vast majority of what was happening, the trolling, the doxing, the hacking, was not coming out of Russia. It was coming out of the United States itself. Russia, doesn't need to do that sort of thing when there are willing participants, whether on a corporate level or on a government level, who are willing to do that sort of thing for them already. And this is where, even though I am totally against this whole MAGA phenomena, I believe that what transpired in the United States and what is continuing to transpire in the United States has a homegrown basis that is not international at all. And that basically we are being misled, that the public is being misled by the media or otherwise to create this, narrative of these outside forces trying to act the American democracy. Whereas the fact of the matter is, and as January 6th proved beyond any shadow of a doubt, that these entities are actually within the United States itself. They're not outside. They're not Russians. They're not Iranians. They're not anybody else. And moreover, a country like the United States and the kind of technological and military power that it possesses is not easily hackable at any time. So,
Sheikh, that's an interesting
yeah,
point. I would like to interject for a quick second.
sure, go for it. Go for it.
Is
Yeah.
most of these time when I seen these people brought up in a courtroom in front of a judge, their lawyer will always defend them by saying, "My client is a performance artist." So a lot of these guys in the spiritual and love and light communities and the occult communities, when they get caught and when karma catches up to them, their lawyer will always say, "Oh, my client's a performance artist." And what I've seen is, like, when I witnessed all of this stuff throughout history, 90% of the time, the enemy is usually right in your own home.
Yes.
So you're right. Like, the U.S. being the giant that it is in government, military, intelligence, how would they not know where the individuals are operating from? It's like here with the police. If they want to really catch somebody, they'll do a manhunt, and within a day, they'll have the person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Edward Snowden, in the companies, in the NSA contracting companies that he worked with, he disclosed that back in the zeros, the technology existed for the government, or these contractors for the government, to basically pinpoint any individual through any firewall. This could be even government firewalls. They could pinpoint any anonymous poster down to the very block that he lived, down to his actually chair that he lived. That they have that capability. They had that technology back then when he was around, to basically identify any individual. So if that kind of technology existed in the zeros, then this narrative that we have been fed, that somehow the Russians hacked into the voting systems of the election 2016 and tripped the election for Donald Trump rather than Hillary Clinton, is complete nonsense. This is all happening within the United States itself. I am no friend of Vladimir Putin or the Putinist regime. I think they are scum of the universe. But the facts are facts. And when you have a confession of a former professional troll, basically a former professional troll who was working for a company, paying him to troll, dox, surveillance individuals, and he claims to me that this is a widespread industry in the United States and Canada, and it's not regulated by any means, and that they have their own lobbies, in fact, preventing the U.S. Congress or even state legislatures in the United States from regulating this sort of industry. What does that tell you? Now, to go back to the issue at hand, and with Reddit and these ex-Baha'i subreddit people, the thing is that they have found themselves a willing patsy in this individual, Dale Husband. And this individual is a complete, in my opinion, a classic form of what is called as a useful idiot, right? He vociferously defends some of the individuals on this ex-Baha'i, like, some of the names that I mentioned in my own podcast I made today, this guy Mirza John, or this investigator 919. Mr. Dale Husband has never once in his life had an actual interaction, a live interaction with even one of these people, not one time. But because they claim to have his back, right? He will defend them and then act as a conduit of propaganda for the Islamic Republic of Iran. One example of this is in this blog of his that he posted back in February, where he claims that he pursues a very logical and evidence-based method to try to refute my claims about early Babism. Whereas if you go through all of his posts, nothing of the sort has ever occurred with Dale Husband. In fact, it was me that is pushing the links, the analysis, the sources, and the historiography, which these people, basically then reject because they're pushing a narrative, a gatekept narrative of Babism. Then this was the real icing on the cake, where he claims to be a expert on Shiism, and that he can use Shia narratives to refute my claims. This is a guy, a former Baptist turned Baha'i, now ex-Baha'i, Unitarian Universalist, claiming to be an atheist. We proved this guy, based on his own words, to be a child groomer, right? And now he's claiming to be an expert on Shiism as well. This individual, if anybody actually sits down and reads this guy's blog and does a psychological profiling of this guy, and also looks at some of these videos of his that he's published on his YouTube page, will quickly come to the conclusion that this guy is a delusional psychiatric case. But there you have it. You have these agents of the Islamic Republic of Iran, who are obviously that. Anybody who compares their postings and just basically goes through all the different pages of Reddit that these people have been on, especially the Investigator 919, will quickly see that these people are pushing a very specific government line. And with that Investigator 919, back during the whole Mahsa Amini thing in last year, this guy went in public on the ex-Baha'i page, pushing the government line of the Islamic Republic, that the narratives about Mahsa Amini's demise were lies. This is an Iranian government lie. That Mahsa Amini basically collapsed, right? That is the Iranian government lie, and that these stories that were coming from the doctors and actual eyewitnesses on the ground that saw fractures to her skull, that saw scars on her body, that saw her face all puffed up, including her family who saw her at the hospital. All of these people are liars, but the official government line of the IRI, the same IRI that has been brutalizing the Iranian people since September of that year in the most unbelievable terms, they're telling the truth. And Mr. Dale Husband, some jack sitting in Fort Worth, Texas, is actually spinning the Iranian government line. How ridiculous is this? And what do you call an individual like that other than being a sock puppet and a patsy and a useful idiot for the IRI? What else is he? Your voice is gone. No sound. You have no sound, Salman.
Yes, do you hear me now?
Yeah, now I hear you, but you went off. Everything that you just said before wasn't recorded.
What I was saying is that recently, and there's no doubt in what you're saying, that they're all puppets. And I recently was in Pakistan, and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and the Islamic Republic of Iran, they're like two separate heads of the same dragon. Even now over there's so many journalists being kidnapped. People are being kidnapped. Their intelligence agency, the ISI, is kidnapping people without any reason. You see on the news, you have mothers crying for their family members, for their sons, and there's no justice, no answer. And behind the scenes, when these people go overseas to England, all of these politicians and their children, they all have this elitism, including the Indians, while their people are starving and suffering on all sides. And they're all collectively together on one end, right, with the Anglo-Saxon hand behind them, while their people are suffering. And that's exactly right. They're just there as puppets. And at the end, those that make a deal with the devil, trust me, you get
We'll go to the devil. We'll go to the devil themselves. And,
yes.
and there's no doubt about it at all. I mean, they can say whatever they want about me. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of this narrative, all of these people that I mentioned, Dale Husband, Mirza John, Investigator 919, they are completely expendable to the people above themselves, and they will be hung out to dry.
Well, for Mirza John, I'll call him Mirza Mother Chod John.
Yeah, that's who I call him. Mirza Mother Chod, because that is what he is, a person. And this is the same guy, aka Nasser Emtisali, who for years and years was taking my material, whether I had posted it on Usenet, whether I had posted it on my own blog or elsewhere on Facebook, and reproducing it on his own blog. Now, all of a sudden, because I am standing against these people, right, he's taken the opposite tack, which proves to any dispassionate, any objective observer that you're dealing with a rank opportunist of the First Order who's playing a very dirty game. But because his game is now, I have their number and I know what their game is about, he's then, basically cutting tail and doing what he's doing.
Yep.
But the fact that these people are working with the Baha'is, and that Reddit and these lists, especially the ex-Baha'i and the people that are associated with that subreddit of ex-Baha'i, are actually on the same team with the Baha'is, there is no doubt about it whatsoever. I would love the opportunity one day to go to a court of law and put all of this evidence in front of a judge and jury and let them decide what the hell is going on. Because by the rules of evidence of any court, any legitimate court, right, these people would be nailed to the wall, and Dale Husband himself would be nailed to the wall immediately as a patsy and a sock puppet and a useful idiot of these people.
And that's when their lawyers will say my client is a performance artist. That's where I caught Dietrich too, because Dietrich was stealing a lot of his illustrations and images from Asian cosplay artists, and he was claiming a lot of those illustrations as his own. Then he starts talking about the kings of Edom and the Chochoa and all of this stuff, and majority of the stuff he's stealing from H.P. Lovecraft and the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft. So anyone can look all of this stuff up, whether it's him plagiarizing H.P. Lovecraft or whether it's him plagiarizing the Asian cosplay artist. And he steals the articles of like different press releases and he claims it as his own when he reads it in a monologue. But a lot of these guys are trained as silver-tongued actors, so they would sound very convincing when they're speaking. But see, that's the nature of the game that we're dealing with. They can defame and dox and swat anyone that they want. But when you try to follow the law and you report these people with evidence, I even sent the timestamps and links to San Francisco police, to the FBI with the receipts from the post office that yes, you did receive the stuff that I sent you, so that they cannot deny it. I have established a paper trail. If it ever comes down the road where I do face him in a court, I would rip these people to shreds. But
Of course you would.
that's why they don't talk about me anymore and they don't mention me anymore, because you must have a paper trail, have all the evidence. So when the time does come, because they're not going to do anything anyway, they just want to entrap you. And that's what a lot of these informants do. So you must always be careful. And thankfully, me as a Muslim growing up in the post 9/11 world, we were taught firsthand how to deal with these freaks who were setting up innocent Muslims in fake sting operations.
With other Muslims actually helping the police to do it. This is the tragedy of it, and this is the situation we have today. That you have so-called ex-Baha'is, people who should be ostensibly exposing this Baha'i thing as the giant fraud that it is, are actually being used behind the scenes by the very forces collaborating to keep that narrative intact, i.e. the Islamic Republic. And this is why this confession of this individual to Kayvan Yahyai is such a piece of gold, because it confirms what I have been saying for years now, that the IRI and the Baha'is are collaborating. He says it himself to this individual. We're not so much worried about the Baha'is. The Baha'is are harmless. We're working with them. Our focus are these Azalis, these Bayanis. This is who we're really after to eradicate once and for all. And these people who had themselves been following Hassan Ershad for so many years, but once they became dissidents to the regime themselves during the Woman Life Freedom movement, they themselves were then ratted out by Hassan Ershad. And this is the nature of the duplicity of the kind of people that you're dealing with, that they are only your friends, right, on an ad hoc basis. This is why I never took this Mirza John seriously, even when he used to email me on a regular basis at one point under his Nasser Imtisali name, because my vibe of these people is that they're working on it. There's an agenda at work, right? Yes. And lo and behold, the agenda proved itself beyond any reasonable doubt. Now, the issue that every Iranian opposition member knows very well is that the majority of whereas in the United States you have these troll farms that are happening all throughout North America, the fact is India and Pakistan, and even especially Pakistan, appear to service countries like the IRI more than any other. So
no doubt. I've seen that firsthand recently when I was in Pakistan. I mean, there's no doubt because of how all these people are interconnected, and plus because of the poverty, it's easier to buy somebody over there.
Yeah. Yeah. And lo and behold, they did this with this individual in Delhi who claimed to me that he was from Kashmir. This guy who writes on Facebook under the name of Sheikh Plato. I worked out his gig really fast about what he's about. He's a takfiri, and he claims to be a Babi while pushing the most anti-Shia, most, just like rabidly takfiri kind of positions against the Shia. And then he simultaneously tries to claim it be a Babi. He hooked up or was assigned to this individual, this Polish guy, Paul Jules, that I think Stephen and you might kind of touch on in your podcast that's coming up.
Yes.
So these two are now working together. And obviously, this Paul Jules character, as I've had Poles themselves tell me, that this guy is another nutcase that is very easily manipulable or even bought, and especially in the UK, because a big part of this whole troll industry also is operating out of the UK. Because remember, the Tories, the Conservatives, deregulated the entire UK economy over the last 10 years,
Yes.
beyond what it was already was. So operating as a troll, as a professional troll, a guy who posted 5 years ago on Reddit, and I have the links, and I sent these links to Stephen Bear, who looked at them. A guy who claimed to be a Nazarite Baha'i, wanting to create a reform Baha'i movement under the Nazarite wing, right? All of a sudden shows up and is now an expert on Babism and sets up his own blog, sets up his own Facebook page, and is consistently just fabricating information out of thin air that is so silly and childish at the same time. But basically, they raised this guy to pit him against me in the social media. Luckily, he is such a nutcase that no one takes him seriously. But Dale Husband of the ex-Baha'i crowd, this agent sock puppet of the IRI, is his greatest defender. So this now establishes the nexus between Paul Jules and the ex-Baha'i crowd, in which Stephen, picked up on immediately, knowing these tactics the way he does. So he's going to probably be touching on this tomorrow. So the question is, how do you put these people in their place? You put these people in their place precisely in what we're doing right now, right? If they dox you, you dox them back. I don't believe in this thing, that you turn the other cheek with these sorts of people. Turning the other cheek is not a strategy that works with criminals, and you are dealing with criminals. And what is interesting to me, and Stephen Bayer also mentioned this in a couple of different conversations that we've had in the past, is that the kind of posting that Mr. Dale Husband did, that he took off, where he's overtly admitting to child grooming. Usually these international criminal entities, there's always that child grooming pedophile element attached to it. So I have gone on record and I've accused these people of potentially running a racket to that end from Reddit itself. So the question is, where's law enforcement? Why isn't law enforcement in the United States and on the international level looking at these people more seriously about running a potential child grooming racket? Because you have one of their central members, one of their most important members, who is on record publicly for advocating this kind of behavior. Why is that?
Sheikh, that's an interesting point that you pointed out, because even with this Dietrich character, he says that he in the San Francisco area, that he goes to Silicon Valley, and there's an estate where there are underage young boys, and he drinks their blood because he claims to be a vampire, right? So he's admitting on air that I purchased a girl off the street. So he's admitted in human trafficking, number one. He's saying he's going to this estate in Silicon Valley and drinking the blood of young boys, while he's making these same dangerous accusations against others, where he's doxing and swatting people who are no longer associated with him because they found out he was a fraud. And you're right. Where is law enforcement? I followed everything San Francisco police told me. File a report with my local police with the evidence and timestamps, send everything over to them. And I even sent a copy of it to the YouTube, right? To their YouTube headquarters. But why is this guy still on air? Because these people are all protected under national security. And if we faced them in a court, they would get ripped to shreds. And basically their lawyers will defend them as performance artists, as how we've seen with Alex Jones and how we've seen with other people, that, this is just a character he's playing. This is not his real identity. This is not his real name. And that's when you find out who these people really are. And that's why I believe, like you said, if they wanted to dox innocent people, then you make sure you don't run away from these criminals and cowards and you face them. Like when he tried to dox me, I made sure that I put that out in the public record. And after that, I never heard from him again. And it's been a year and everything's been okay. And but at the same time, in our path, we're not supposed to be cowards. So cowards are not supposed to be in the Noor FSO. You have to be a
No.
fighter and you have to be a go-getter because there are countless Sufi orders out there, so many of them. But why is the Noor FSO and its members always seen as a threat? That is my question. And that's why we have to keep up the good work that we're doing in terms of uniting humanity. And even all of the BS people here in the US who are claiming love and light and spirituality and inclusiveness for everyone, 90% of the groups here, whether it's spiritual, love and light, occult, disclosure, whatever have you, 90% of them are run by these informant type beings who are there to basically entrap you and incite you. Like we have Anjem Chowdhury in the UK.
Yeah.
He's a British
He's,
agent.
yeah.
We
Yes.
have this guy in Australia, the Imam of Peace. He's another agent.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
come here in America. The leader of the Proud Boys turned out to be an informant who was there to incite people and get them arrested. So people are not using their common sense.
They're not using their common sense because they don't understand the nature of the beast. The nature of the beast is actually quite easy to figure out. This is the logic of capitalism, and it's especially in its neoliberal form, where perception management around the product is how you keep the product lucrative, right? And sellable to a certain market. Now, this product can be either negative or positive, doesn't matter. But perception management and information control of this product is the basic fundamental principle about how you promote your product, whatever it is, and then how you basically confront your market opposition. So basically, my conclusion is that with this entire troll industry that we've been dealing with for the last couple of years, is that we're dealing with capitalism itself. We're dealing with the real Hydra, if you would.
Yeah.
And so it is incumbent on one to understand the logic of the game. Once you understand the logic of the game, you're that much more equipped with a weapon to combat it without having to fire a single shot. So these people think that they have marginalized me. Maybe they have marginalized me on Reddit, but Reddit is not the entire internet. I have a following on Facebook. I have a following on YouTube. I have a following here and there. As you can confess, I don't ask for a single cent from anybody. If the people who are coming to me, they're coming to me of their own volition. We're having discussions. The relationship between you and I happened organically. The relationship that happened between myself and the Gnostic Quran channel happened organically,
Yeah.
and others. That relationship of me with no easy answers happened organically. This person reached out to me, and so on and so forth. So for all the claims that these people have made that I have no followers or I'm marginalized, that I'm just a crazy person just barking in the wind. These are the original Baha'i narratives that have no reality for anybody who even does 2 seconds of Googling, let alone, to actually look at any of these videos or the content that I'm putting up. The FSO continues to grow. I am not going out there to try to recruit people to the FSO because I think that this is not the purpose of the work. People who want to come to the FSO are welcome to come to the FSO. It is by invitation only. Usually, but I am not trying to fill up a classroom like other organizations are, especially the Baha'is or others. So this is our dawah. Our dawah is the dawah of truth. It is not a sectarian dawah. We're not trying to, we're not saying that you have to join us in order to know what the truth is. It would be good if you did, but that's not a requirement. Be in solidarity. Being in solidarity with the message is more important than joining a group or joining a club. I am not trying to create a club. I'm trying to create a movement. Very big difference. So when you try to create a movement, you're going to have setbacks. You're going to have people like these people on Reddit acting the way they do. But, I should mention here, these people are confined to Reddit. They have no audience beyond Reddit. And it is very easy on Reddit to lie, to create false perceptions of what is actually going on. Because you could create an infinite myriad of identities on Reddit itself, that can talk to each other. And this is one of the things that this Delaware guy back in 2018 told me. He told me that this was going on in Facebook during the lead up to the 2016 election, that part of the company that he was working for, there was one segment of the company that was basically tasked, like each individual employee, in making up to 100 different identities on Facebook, right? That then they would talk to each other on these various pro-Trumps and pro-MAGA lists on Facebook.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, Sheikh, because a lot of the crypto scammers that I saw on YouTube, they were doing that too, where if you go to the comments where the person say, I made a good return on my investment, then there would be like 20 comments going back and forth, agreeing with each other. And then like on the 22nd or 23rd comment, it would say, please contact this WhatsApp number to get further information. So it is like that, and you're absolutely right with the Noor FSO. It is a tight and a beautiful brotherhood and an organic brotherhood that we have built. And I encourage anybody, if you are located in the U.S. and Canada and you're interested in the Noor FSO, please reach out to me. And we need good people, people that are courageous, people that are not afraid to get down and dirty into the fight with the enemy, and who are not cowards. Please reach out to me. And please catch up on all of the podcasts that I did with Sheikh Wahid Azal on my channel. If you go to the playlist, I have the Noor FSO playlist, and you will see from day one how organically how our brotherhood has built from the first podcast up until now with part 20, which is archived on both of our channels. So please get the word out and know that people that are standing for the truth, we have to be united in this time, in this age of chaos, and from 2020 through 2029 against the agents of chaos who are also there targeting us, and they come in all walks of life as well. So we must be ready and united. And like Sheikh Wahid said, there comes a time where you don't turn the other cheek, just like with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Imam Ali, and all of these great figures, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. When it came time to destroy their enemies, they were there in the fight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the truth.
So, Sheikh, do you have any concluding comments?
Well, you know, I think the only thing I could say is to cite the very first verse of Surah Al-Munafiqun, you know, the chapter of the hypocrites with the book, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, إذا جاءك المنافقون قالوا نشهد إنك رسول الله والله يعلم إنك لرسول والله يشهد المنافقين الكاذبون. When this is the translation, when the hypocrites they come and they say that we testify that you are the messenger of God, God testifies back that these people are the liars. And here, the messenger of God can be the messenger of truth. It doesn't necessarily have to relate to an individual.
Yes.
Then it says in the third verse, which is one of the verses I like here, ذَلِكَ بإنهم آمنوا ثمنوا كفروا فتبع على قلوبهم فهم لا يفقهون. That is because they believed, or they know what the truth is, then they rejected the truth. So a seal was set on their hearts, therefore they understand not. And this is a wonderful parable for people like this Dale husband, you know, who is actually acting in the capacity of a shill and a sock puppet and a useful idiot to a bunch of literal paid criminals that are living in Pakistan and in India, and probably not even in Iran itself, you know, basically shilling for the government of Iran.
That's it. That's it, Sheikh. And thank you so much for this podcast and this education. And until next time for part 21, thank you so much. And please, for anyone who's in the U.S., reach out to me if you have any questions. Okay.